A significant new feature in MicroGDS version 9 is the new Properties window. In this video, I'm going to show you some of the major features associated with the Properties window and enhancements to attributes and a new type of style, schemas. The Properties window is currently here on the right. And as this video resolution is relatively low, and for clarity, let's hide the document organizer and the mini window editor and dock the Properties window here on the left. The Properties window replaces the previous MicroGDS version's Query Details dialog, and you can use Ctrl-Q on the keyboard to show or hide the window. Whenever I click onto graphics in the drawing, like this wall, the properties for the graphics are displayed in an easy-to-read order, starting with the document details, followed by the layers information, like the name and phase number. In this section we have object details, and finally details about the selected primitive type. A powerful feature with the Properties window is that you can edit properties. For instance, I can edit the object name, or change the line style from default to a style called Garden Wall. And properties shown with a grey background can't be modified from the Properties window, like this area and length of a primitive. If I'm in object mode, and when I click onto an object, the Properties window is populated with the document, layer and object details only. In primitive mode, the primitives details are also shown. Now let's select these two primitives. Now that I have multiple items selected, the word mixed is shown where properties have different values, and in this case different line styles. And I can change the line style to Garden Wall 2 for both primitives. If I select different types of primitives, like this text and graphics, the properties are displayed in italics, and this is to indicate they are not applicable to the whole selection. Now, let's look at how attributes are handled in the Properties window. I've added some attribute values to the sanitary ware. Let's select this bath. The Properties window shows me the attributes of the object and allows me to edit any one of them. Let's change the retail value of the bath to £350. Now the best way to show mnemonics in the Properties window is via a schema. A schema is a new style introduced at MicroGDS version 9. If I display the document organizer, you can see the Styles tab has a new style called Schemas. When I double-click over this schema called Sanitary Ware, the Edit Schema dialog opens. A schema indicates which objects and layers the specified mnemonics are intended to be used with. In this case, the three mnemonics listed here refer to all objects starting with the word Sani, and on any layer indicated by this asterisk. Let's close the Edit Schema dialog and click onto this Wash Hand Basin. You can see in the Properties window that the Wash Hand Basin has mnemonics as specified in the schema. Notice the material attribute here is shown as none. This is indicating that no value has been given for this attribute. So let's select one. And from this drop-down list, I'll select ceramic. You can explicitly assign an attribute to one or more entities, like you could at MicroGDS 8. And I can add an attribute by pressing one of these Add Layer, Add Object, or Add Reference attribute buttons. And I think we'll add item cost and assign a value of £125 to it. And I can define new mnemonics by pressing this button. Now if I delete the attribute item cost by pressing the right button on my mouse, the attribute is no longer associated with this object. If I do the same with the material attribute, then the value returns to none. This is because the material attribute is specified in the schema for the wash hand basin and will always be shown even if it has no value. Now I'm going to add the item cost attribute mnemonic again, this time to all the wash hand basins on my drawing. And let's select all basins. I'm going to do this using the Set Edit dialog. Click onto the Set Edit button here. In MicroGDS version 9, the Set Edit dialog has these additional pick buttons. Let's click this Pick Object button and click onto the basin. Now that it has populated the Set Edit dialog, I can press Object Mode and select All to select all wash hand basins. And press the Add Reference Attribute button here. Let's select the mnemonic definition item cost again and add an initial value here, let's say 200. This value has been applied to all the selected objects, so now when I click onto any of the wash hand basins, they have an item cost of 200. And I can change any one if I wish, simply clicking onto it and changing the value. Let's change it to 250. Okay, let's take a quick look at these buttons. So far I've shown you the properties window in details view. Now this displays the full properties about the selected primitives or objects. And it will also display properties about assembly objects, like this sideboard assembly. Because I'm in primitive mode, you can see information about the primitive I snapped to. For example, the line style is called lamp. In an object called Fern Dining Lamp: 1, which is part of an assembly object, Fern Dining Sideboard, nested inside the Fern Dining Suite assembly object, and all on a layer called Furniture. I can show this hierarchy of data in different ways. If I select the By Structure Display button, a new pane appears here. When I click onto the layer name, the bottom pane displays the layer details. Clicking the plus symbol expands the hierarchy right down to the primitive I clicked on. And notice the sideboard assembly symbol here has a grey fill. This means that I can't edit the assembly unless I tunnel into the dining suite assembly first. But I can, at any stage within this hierarchy, highlight or zoom to graphics, and if editable, select the graphics. If I selected a whole range of graphics, like this, the top pane would populate all the layers the selected graphics are on, and I can expand each layer to examine the contents of the selection on that particular layer. Another way of displaying your data in the Properties window is by type display. And this starts with the document details, then the layer, object, and primitive. This final button here is the Query Details button. Now this is similar to the old Query Details command. Now I currently have this wall selected. When I click the Query Details button and click onto this text, I can see here the properties for the text. But this hasn't changed my selection, so pressing Escape returns me back to the details of the selected primitive. And that concludes this video on the Properties window. If you'd like more information, please see the MicroGDS help.